Experience Speaker Series sponsored by the Daniels College of Business at the University of Denver. I'm Dean Chris Reardon. Tonight's an exciting program. We have the President and Chief Executive Officer of Molson Coors with us tonight, Peter Swinburn. This event is something very special in the life of the college. It brings together our community of faculty, staff, students, alums, corporate partners, and friends. This series is made possible by the generous support of many of our corporate sponsors, whom I'd like to acknowledge now. Grant Thornton, First Bank, CoBank, JP Morgan Chase, and Rocky Mountain Human Resource People and Strategy. Let's please recognize our corporate sponsors in helping make this event possible. We have a terrific series this year. Besides Barbara O'Brien, the Lieutenant Governor, kicked it off last month. We have Peter Swinburn tonight. But going forward in January, we'll kick back off with a healthcare panel with Donna Lynn, who's the president of Kaiser Permanente, Colorado, and Patty Gabeau, the CEO of Denver Health. We're also bringing in Stephen Chipman, who's the CEO of Grant Thornton. We have General Krulak from the U.S. Army. We also have Howard Schultz, chairman and CEO of Starbucks. And we will end our series with Andy Taylor, CEO of Enterprise Cars. A pretty exciting series, wouldn't you say? Let me just give you a few of the housekeeping items and then we'll get on with the program. For those of you who are interested in continuing education credits, CLEs, CPEs, CEUs, you can stop at the lobby in the front for forms and they'll help you fill those out. At the end of the session, we will have question and answer. We'll have folks going around with microphones, so please just raise your hands if you would like to ask Peter a question. He's more than happy to entertain those. And then we will have a reception following the presentation tonight where you can come up and talk one-on-one or in groups with Peter Swinburn. Tonight, Peter's going to be talking about corporate social responsibility. I think that's a word that we hear a lot. A lot of companies claim to be really good at it. But I can tell you that Molson Coors is one of the best that I've seen. If you get on their website, they have an extensive report that profiles their commitment to corporate social responsibility. They outline their governance and their ethics structure. They outline how they relate to people. They outline how they're relating to environmental responsibility, and they're also looking at the impact of their products on the community. Their online CSR report is something that's just exemplary in the world of corporations today, but I think it actually goes beyond that. Many people can put corporate social responsibility onto paper, but it's really about how you enact it. Peter Swinburn has said, corporate social responsibility is not something that you do on the side, but in fact, is something that you incorporate into the day-to-day life of business. They have an executive council that has members from all of the communities and organizations that are responsible for corporate social responsibility, and they're held accountable for the initiatives and for achieving results. Peter Swinburn himself is a man that walks the talk. He's a leader with over 34 years of experience in the global beer industry. He's helped take Molson Coors into a new era and moved it into a world of globalization, entering the markets in Mexico and Asia. He's also seen significant growth within the company and helped with the joint venture of Molson and Miller Coors. Please join me in welcoming our wonderful leader tonight, Mr. Peter Swinburn.
Thanks very much, Chris. Are we on? Yep. Thanks very much. And thank you for the invite. This is just the most wonderful location to speak in. And thank you all for coming. This is where, usually in this part of the procedure, I drop the bombshell that I brought no free samples. And I usually lose about half of the audience. And I'm sure if I've got the temerity to go on beyond 7:30 when the football starts, I'll be talking to myself. So I guess the general idea here is for me to talk for about 40 minutes. I do have some videos for some light relief, and so don't worry too much. And then I'm going to take some questions. It can be on corporate responsibility or indeed anything to do with business. Happy to take them. As long as it's not on politics or religion, then I'll do my best to answer them. So, corporate responsibility, or CR for short. It's a broad church. It's a growing church. Congregations getting bigger daily. My homespun example of this is that I left the States in 2005 to go back and work in the UK. And when I left in 2005, often I would end up in conversations with peers of mine, different businesses, and if I talked to them about global warming, for example, I would say that the majority of people I spoke to politely thought that I was wrong and had no basis for that assumption, and impolitely looked at me as if I had four heads and discounted it completely. I came back to work here in 2007, and the environment had changed completely. It was taken as a given, and organizations were working it in to their programs. An example closer to home is that, as I will explain to you later on, we use external measurements, and every year we improve in various areas, whether it's carbon emissions or so on. And we improve relatively well, but each year we only manage in certain indices just to stay where we are or grow slightly because everyone else is moving so quickly in this environment. So it is a broad church. Does that mean that if you've not got a program, a sustainable CR program, that your business is going to collapse around you? Or is it just the latest burden, the latest corporate burden that all of us have to manage going forward? Well, like most things, it's neither. And really the answer to that is it depends. And like most things in business, it depends on whether, in business speak, it ties in with your strategic intent as a business. But in plain language, it's whether it makes sense. Whether it makes sense to you as a business in terms of what you're trying to achieve. At its worst, CR can be unwieldy, it can be costly, it can be a diversion of attention, and bluntly a waste of resource. Paradoxically, everything that CR should not be. So, with that as a sort of backdrop, let me take you in a bit further. If that is what it shouldn't be, let's have a look at some examples or some quotes of what it should be. And I'll let you read these as we go through them. Okay, so I've got you to do a bit of work. As you'll see, all the definitions vary slightly, but if you try and pull them all together, they roughly say one thing, and that is we don't live and we don't work in isolation. We have an impact both on the environment and the society in which we live. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to manage that impact one way or another. In Molson Coors, I guess, we would break down corporate responsibility into three areas. There's the you do it because it's the right thing to do. You do it because it makes good business sense, or common sense. You do it because it can, if you get it right, give you the ability to reinforce and bolster those areas of your company that give you competitive advantage. That last bit for me is where CR gets sexy. And that's the bit that I'll be coming back to later on. But before I get there, let me just give you a health warning, which I always do when I'm talking to audiences like this. What I'm going to be talking about today is what we do in Molson Coors. I am not a consultant. I am not selling anything. Please take out of this what you want to take out of it. I am not for 1 minute pretending that Molson Coors has got it all right. I'm not pretending for 1 minute that what we do in Molson Coors is how you run every single business. There are many, many ways to run a business. There are many things you can do within the CR environment. All I'll be talking to you about today is how we do it in Molson Coors, why we do it in Molson Coors, and why we believe it works in Molson Coors. And whilst I'm talking about Molson Coors, let me tell you a little bit about the business, just in case some of you don't know. Molson Coors was formed about 5 years ago when the Molson Company in Canada and the Coors Company in the US were put together. We're big, but we're not enormous. We're about the 5th or 6th biggest brewery in the world. As of close of play tonight, our market capitalization was $8.57 billion. We have EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, of about 1.2 billion. We employ 15,000 people across the world. Our centers of operation are obviously in Canada with the Molson Company, where we are the second biggest brewer there. But most importantly to us, we have the biggest brand in Canada, which is Coors Light. We are the second biggest player in the United States, where Coors Light is the third biggest brand. And we are the second biggest player in the United Kingdom, where again, importantly to us, Carling is by far and away the biggest beer brand. We have a growing international presence, not least of all in China, where we employ 400 plus people, and we've just taken control of a brewery called Sihai in China, which is in the northeast of Beijing. Coors Light are brands that are sold internationally, such as Corona and Heineken. Coors Light is the 5th biggest brand in the world and the fastest growing. So, snapshot of the business, and obviously the families in the business go back some 300 years as far as the Molsons are concerned, about 180 as far as the Coors family is concerned. So it gives you a flavour of who we are and our size. So let's go back to those 3 things that I talked about. The right thing to do it because it makes common sense, and the sexy bit, how do you tie it into areas of competitive advantage? As with all of these things, I could give you loads of examples under every heading, but I want to try and keep it simple, and also I want to try and get you out before the football starts. So let me just give you an example of where it makes business sense, or common sense, as far as Molson Coors is concerned. This past year, we met our environmental targets, and we saw a 9% reduction in energy use and a 15% reduction in greenhouse emissions. However, and with CR you find that there is usually a trade-off somewhere. Our water use and solid waste increased. Now, there was a reason for that. We chose to what we call optimize the US network, which basically means you can make whatever beer you like anywhere in the network. That meant that our water usage went up. However, it allowed for a reduction in our CO2 emissions resulting from lower route-to-market transportation costs that we undertake in the US. So an example of that would be we reconfigured the railway shipments to increase the amount of beer on each railcar carrier. In the US, as a result of that, we reduced by nearly 40% the number of rail cars, an estimated saving of 3,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. We're proud of these efforts, but also we're humbled by the amount that's left to do. Obviously, I keep an eye on progress, but we allow and we want everybody externally to keep an eye on our progress, which is why we issue all of our targets in advance on our website, and we report every year on how we do against those targets. But let me just come back to the issue. Which business would not want to reduce its energy or its water usage by X%? It is just plain common sense. Any business would want to do that. And most businesses, in some way or another, try and do it. They might not call it CR, but they try to do it. So you can go on and give lots of examples, but that just is the common sense piece of CR. Why would you not do it? It might come under the heading of cost savings, doesn't matter. It's CR, and it's good for business, it's good for the environment, it makes sense. What about the other areas that I talked about? Well, if you're looking for CR to help you in the areas of potential competitive advantage, and yet it's such this broad church, it's society, it's the environment, it's external relations. How do you go about doing that? Well, I think the first thing any business needs to know is exactly what are the potential sources of their competitive advantage. And again, I'll talk about Molson Coors. We believe there are two sources of actually sustainable competitive advantage. And the word sustainable is really important because most things in business can be replicated. It might cost you money. You might have to build a new factory. You might have to get somebody who's a genius to copy some technology, but most things in business over the short to medium term are replicable. We believe that two things are not replicable in the short term. The first is the quality of your brands. It is difficult, though in all the balance sheets you'll see it with businesses, to actually estimate the value of a brand like Coke. But it is the biggest value brand in the world. Loads of colas are made, they're not Coke. How do you estimate the value of something that is just that? The Nike tick. How many golf balls, sneakers, running tops, etc., are made by a multitude of companies across the world? Not one of them has got the emotional hook of a Nike. You can copy the technology of Apple. It has been copied. Nobody's got the brand value of Apple. Once you have that value in your brand, the skill is making sure that you keep the relevancy of that brand to your consumer. If you do that, it is really almost impossible for any other brand to break into that space. I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. The second area that we believe gives us sustainable competitive advantage is the quality of our people. It takes probably 5 years at a minimum for any organization to change the culture, quality, ability of the organization. But if you think about it, it is the most obvious and sensible thing to do. The obvious analogy are sporting analogies. Why would you not want the very best players in your team? Why would you allow mediocre players to play alongside good players? Now in Molson Coors, as most things we do, these things are measured pretty clearly. We have two areas as far as people development is concerned. One is engagement, and I'll come back to that later on, and the other is development. And again, to give you a flavour of the business, the development is very clear-cut. There is ample opportunity to develop yourself in Molson Coors. There are loads of courses, loads of training, one-to-one, whatever you want to do. However, the personal accountability for development is on the individual. And we expect every individual to take advantage of that. We expect every individual to work to a certain standard, and by definition, because people are developing themselves, that standard improves every year. You are not allowed to fall behind that standard. It's not acceptable. Now, some people find that environment too challenging. Other people find it liberating. By definition, we look for the people who find it liberating. But irrespective of what I would be talking about today, whether it were brands, corporate responsibility, whatever, I would start with the quality of your people. Because as an organization and a business, you are going to achieve zero unless you have the best quality people that you can find in your organization. So, we believe that brands and people are our two sources of sustainable competitive advantage. If it takes 5 years to develop great people, nobody's going to do that very easily. Your competition is not going to match you. So, if they're the areas that we concentrate in terms of sustainable competitive advantage and obviously improve profits, what's the magic dust that CR brings to us? Now, in order to explain this, I need to give you a real insight into our company and how we develop the strategic framework that guides us today. And as I hope you will see, we did so by following another truth that we have in Molson Coors, and that is the best answers to all our questions always come from the people within the organization. When I became CEO of Molson Coors about 3 years ago, we had a large, diverse global workforce. We were a combination of a number of different companies. We were not one company, we were at least 3 with separate ambitions and separate cultures. What we heard in employee surveys was that we lacked a common sense of purpose, we had no ambition, and that what ambition we did not align with everybody. And people were asking us, one way or another, for a better compass. And so, a combination of the leadership team and employees from across the company participated in the formation of what we now call our Brew, although we didn't have a name for it at the time. This defines both our ambitions and our culture. I'd like to go back to my opening statements. It depends. It depends on whether what you're trying to do is tied into your strategic intent. You need a strategic intent. This strategic intent is you'll see in many other businesses. Usually it's termed in terms of ambitions, milestones, and so on. We, because it's the way we work, like to keep it in what we call pub talk speak. So basically we talk about what we will do, who we will be, how we will work, and what we will value. We do have an ambition, it's to be a top-tier global brewer. Internally, I must admit, we've got closer metrics on that, but not for public consumption. As I mentioned earlier, we have sorry, I didn't mention earlier, I'll mention it for the first time. We have 4 platforms, 4 main goals. We call these goals BHAGs, which are big, hairy, audacious goals. Stolen, as a lot of you I'm sure will know unashamedly from Collins's Good to Great. And they include, first, is a net profit goal. Second, it's increasing returns from our strategic brands. Third, it's leadership and engagement and development of our people, as I said. And fourth, it's to be recognized for world-class corporate responsibility. They're the 4 platforms that lead into our ambition. Now, clearly defining these, which we have done internally, provides a simple check for every employee. Is what I'm doing supporting one of these 4 planks? If it's not, why am I doing it? Let's do something else. Our brew is not just about driving results. It was also about changing attitudes and behaviors. To this end, we identified, again from inside the business, 3 key behaviors that we believe we needed to take us forward. They are challenging the expected, taking personal accountability, and employees as brand champions. Our brew united us in one purpose. The people in Molson Coors are passionate about building extraordinary brands to delight the world's beer drinkers. That's what we do. We are a brand-driven business. Everything revolves around our brands, and the value of the company is inexorably linked into the value of our brands. Let me just share with you a video that we actually used internally to launch this to our production staff.
At its simplest, it's a compass for our organisation.
It tells us what we want to do, where we want to be.
And it's a roadmap for how we're going to do that.
So it's really the glue that links everybody together.
And it's about giving us a framework to win in an increasingly competitive environment.
I think it also gives a very clear checklist about what is an extraordinary brand.
Probably the start point was a recognition that our organisation is still relatively young, so Molson and Coors only came together a few years ago.
There comes a time when you finish doing all of that, you look around and you say, so what are we?
You know, what is it that we share in common? What's our mission?
So we needed something to do that. As it relates to the industry is consolidating. It's getting tougher and tougher to be successful.
The top 4 global players are considerably bigger than us. They can buy advertising much more cheaply than us. They can buy raw materials, barley, hops, aluminum, everything cheaper than us.
And so we have to be linked together, and the brew is an excellent way to do that.
The reality is the world changes, and you've got 2 options. You can either see what the opposition does and follow them, or you actually decide where you want to be and how you're going to get there, and you get in front of the opposition.
And for us to continue to be able to participate and compete with these guys, then we have to get better.
Well, it's actually the employees who have asked for our brew, so it became very obvious that employees were looking to understand what was expected of them and how what they do fits with the broader organization. We can't just throw money at problems. We have to throw creativity. We have to think differently. We have to act differently.
Set yourself high targets and strive as hard as you possibly can and encourage all of your teammates to do exactly the same.
What our organisation needs is people who come to work and every day are prepared to think about how they can do things in a different, fresh, better way.
Have a healthy dissatisfaction with what we've got.
At the heart of every great brand is a great product, so day in, day out, delivering a great quality product is critical.
You can encourage your friends to try our beers. You can make sure you never go to a restaurant or a bar that doesn't sell our beers.
Whether it's an individual employee going into a store and seeing a carton that's torn or something and doing something about that, taking personal accountability.
It's about having it in your psyche that you want to do it. I mean, if you look at the total number of people in this organisation, approximately 50% or more work in the production arena. And the production people don't really have any margin for error. You know, the beer is either there or it's not there. And so really the concept of delivering extraordinary brands starts with the product itself. Because if that's not right, you haven't got a chance. Part of our brew, I believe anyway, is about each individual in the organisation being able to have an impact on what happens. Because we really do have a big ambition to become a greater company than we are now, and having you on board and the rest of your production colleagues and right across supply chain is absolutely critical to that. So thanks for taking part in the workshop. Enjoy it. Get to know our brew, enjoy living our brew, and enjoy communicating it. It'll be a great pastime for you. Thanks very much. Okay, so I'm not quite sure if you could hear that or not, but my apologies if you couldn't. Some pretty pictures. It was a rollout to the company. It gives you a flavour of what we're trying to do. But the main thing is that we were trying to build a new compass for the business because that's what the business asked us to do. And we recognised early on that corporate responsibility would be a really important driver of our people and our culture. So as we put together the CR strategy, we talked with our stakeholders, our employees, other audiences impacted by our business. We identified 5 areas that make up our commitment to corporate responsibility. For us, it starts with ethical performance, treating our employees, customers, stakeholders generally with integrity and respect. what you'd expect from any major corporation. We support the development, engagement and health of our employees, and we invest in the communities where we live and we work. It means brewing quality products that are marketed and sold responsibly for legally aged adults to drink and enjoy responsibly. We work in a heavily regulated industry. We're striving to extend these best practices throughout our supply chain from grain to grass. It requires us to carefully consider our environmental stewardship in all of our operations and our packaging. And within this area, we specifically emphasize water stewardship. Think about it. 98% of the content of beer is water. We require access to clean water wherever we brew beer. Society requires access to clean water. So our needs and the needs of the environment in which we work are linked together. Strategically, it makes sense. Too often, and you don't need to sit in front of the television very long, you will see adverts usually saying that the company is making this country a safer place to live or a better place to live, or they're investing in our children or our grandchildren. It's really difficult to understand often how that links in with the strategy of the business. And planting 20,000 trees might be in itself a good thing to do, but unless you are a paper manufacturer or cardboard manufacturer, what is the point of doing it other than it's just a good thing to do? Why don't you try and get a double hit on all of these things? So when you come back to shareholder value, you constantly have to ask, if I am spending money in this arena, is it A, the right thing to do, but also B, a common sense thing to do, and C, am I actually lining up with my strategic intent and therefore reinforcing what I'm trying to do as a business and therefore providing shareholder value? It can't be a warm and fuzzy thing. We are transparent. We try and be as transparent as possible. We report our performance externally. The external organizations that we report to include Carbon Disclosure Project, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, True Cost, Risk Metrics, and KLD. From 2010 rankings, we were included in the Carbon Disclosure Leadership Index for S&P 500 companies, as well as recognized for the second year by Newsweek Green Rankings, ranking 7th in food and beverage sector, being the top brewer, and being 160 overall in the US out of the top 500 businesses, punching well above our weight. When we looked at CR internally, as I say, we went to the organization and talked to the people. What our colleagues taught us very quickly was they didn't just want to hear about what the business was doing, they wanted to be involved. They wanted to be part of CR. And they're not alone. In a recent study covered by the Forbes.com CR blog, employees said they wanted to be more involved in business decisions that impact the environment and society. They wanted more participation in business decisions, products and packaging, and support of social and environmental issues. There are a number of programs that make up our community investment commitment. But the most successful events are the ones that actually include our people. For example, in the US and Canada, we've had a long-standing relationship with United Way. We match employee donations dollar for dollar. In 2009, employees were directly involved in giving more than $700,000 to their local communities. I talked about water stewardship. Beginning this past September, we sponsored what will be an annual Water Stewardship Month. More than 1,000 employees across the business volunteered alongside their colleagues in activities designed to protect local water sources. We worked with organizations like Friend of the Forest, Milwaukee Riverkeeper, World Wildlife Fund, and the Vancouver Aquarium for their annual Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup. Employee volunteering is the backbone of our investment program. With these activities, we see our CR values in action, and we strengthen our team at the same time. We are building stronger ties to the place within which we work. It's good business all round. It's the right thing to do. This bit makes common sense because, as I'll talk about in a minute, it leads to a reinforcement of one of those two planks that I said gave us sustainable competitive advantage, namely your people. To give you just a sense of the personal and professional commitment that we have in our ranks, here's a look, and it might just be a look because you might not be able to hear it, but here's a look at one of our employees who has taken the corporate responsibility challenge really to heart. He has incorporated it into the way he goes about his job. Ben Moline, our water resource manager, travelled to Malawi with Molson Coors partner Water for People to help local community.
After working with Water for People here in Golden on watershed management, kind of showing them what we do as Molson Coors within our watershed, they asked me to travel with them to Malawi, where we go out to communities outside of Blantyre and look at wells that have been put in place for the villages and for the tribes. And while we're out looking at these wells, we are looking at how well the wells were working, if the community was receiving enough water for food, drinking, agricultural, cleaning, and if there were any problems with the well. I think it's really important that we have to look outside the beer business to be known for world-class anything. And I think this definitely plays in corporate responsibility. We have a lot of knowledge within this company, be it sustainability, energy, or water resources, that we can provide to other areas and other interests that are not beer related. And I think it's very important that we take this step to go out and help the world, the globe, and our communities. We have some of the finest water in the world to make our brands, and I think it's really important that as a company, we realize that there's a lot of people that don't have any water. And if we have any talent or any ability within the company to go out and provide drinking water to communities, I think it's a great thing that the company does that. Getting involved with groups like Circle of Blue and Water for People will really show that we are world-class corporate responsibility. It's just not the beer business, it's a lot more. When I was traveling around Malawi, we came across one great community. And what they had done is they had taken the well that had been provided to them and they planted a garden at the end of the soakaway where all this excess water would flow. The community then started working together in this garden to really make it grow and prosper. When it was time to harvest the fruits and vegetables, the community collected them together and they were sold to communities outside this one, up to Blantyre or other areas. The community then took this money and they used that money to help maintain the well, buy extra parts, do any maintenance on the well, so that the individual houses, they didn't have to pay a tariff anymore. As this garden continued to grow, it was now generating more money than what they needed to provide for the well. And so then they started providing trees to each individual house. So the community garden was providing the well and now is providing food to each household. We were based in Blantyre, which is kind of the financial district of Malawi. And we would travel slowly further and further away from Blantyre. And one of the things that we noticed very quickly is as you got further away from Blantyre, the characteristics of the people changed. They started getting skinnier. You could see a lot of different health issues popping up. But the one thing that was consistent all the time with the people was how happy and honest and appreciative they were for whatever you were able to help them out with. While I was there, I learned a lot of life lessons that I have really never experienced. You know, what poverty really means, what going without food means. Professionally, I also pulled a lot away. And one of them goes back to our brew, is doing it the right way. And you see a lot of communities that are doing it the right way. They are trying to make big strides. And big strides for them is to have food for the next year. And so taking away from that, it's the little things that you do in each day that can really have big ramifications over the long term for your company or for your life. And I really think if you focus on doing it the right way, even if that's the hard way to do it, it is still the most appropriate way to proceed forward in life, in business, in your community. I'm Ben, and that's my brew.
I think actually Ben is in the audience, so I'm going to embarrass him. Stand up, Ben, take a bow. That's Ben Moline. That video was shown throughout the organization. Everybody just about everybody in the organisation, the 15,000 people, would have seen that video. And hopefully they understand why we're concentrating on water, why it's strategically important to Molson Coors. So, let's build. What I've said is that CR is important to us because we believe it actually can reinforce and bolster the areas of sustainable competitive advantage. Those two areas for us are brands and their people. So how does that manifest itself as far as we're concerned? You might recall, if you could hear it, that being a brand champion was a key behaviour that we were looking for in our brew as part of our culture. So what you get when you cross a brand champion with world-class corporate responsibility? Well, you get something like the British Barley campaign. Carling, as I mentioned earlier, is the biggest selling beer in the UK by a long way. It's one of our signature brands. In 2009, beginning of 2009, Carling sourcing managers signed 70 UK growers up to a 3-year deal to supply 20,000 tonnes of barley direct to the company. As you know, the benefits of locally sourced agriculture are numerous. In addition to supporting local farmers, local sourcing cuts down on transport miles, lowering our costs and the carbon emissions associated with rail or truck distribution. Not only have our consumers responded positively to the move, we've also received something called a Red Tractor certification, and we're in good company. Apparently the Red Tractor mark now appears on over £10 billion worth, $15 billion worth of fresh food and drink in the UK. It's an independent verification that the product has been made to high quality standards from farm to shelf, and more than 500 leading companies in the UK and all major UK retailers use the Red Tractor logo. As you will see, the Red Tractor has a chairman, and this is what he said about us. In Canada, we have revitalised in the last 12 months the most iconic brand we have, which is a brand called Molson Canadian. We did it with a campaign called Made from Canada. We reminded our beer drinkers that Molson Canadian is made with the best the land has to offer. Prairie barley, Canadian water, and no preservatives. Since these efforts have been launched, and these represent 2 examples of how we use CR to bolster our brands, we've had a tremendous response. And not just in terms of reputational benefit, but increased brand loyalty and increased sales. The rationale for this is very clear. Increasingly, consumers want to understand the company behind the brand. People surfing the internet last Christmas buying products spent 15 minutes making a decision. The vast majority of that time was done researching the business, not actually looking at the product they were going to buy. It's important that people understand that. So going forward, it's going to be more important as far as we're concerned. But coming back to the brand, Carling's proposition is Britishness. It owns Britishness. Molson Canadian is wrapped in the national flag. Why would you not try and harmonise and try and manage your CR activity to reinforce your brand proposition? Your value is in your brand. The value of the brand is in the emotional hook in the proposition. By reinforcing through a CR methodology and communication what your brand is all about, you are protecting that brand. You are making it virtually impossible for the competition to encroach on that area you own. As far as we're concerned, Britishness and Canadianness. You are locking in for the long term the value of your brand. Yes, you need excellent communication. Yes, you need good copy. Yes, you need a good social networking campaign. But why would you not use CR? It reinforces wholeheartedly your area of competitive advantage, and it gives your consumers a reason to believe, both emotionally and at point of purchase. Molson Canadian, from up to 2009, had 5 straight years of decline. with an average decline of around about 6 to 7%. This year, in the toughest market we've had in beer for probably about 15 years, it's growing by 6%. That's a sort of an 11 percentile switch on a very big brand in Canada. It's also increasing its price, so we haven't got there by giving it away. 75% of the business in the UK revolves around Carling. That's how big it is. The UK business has increased its profits 75% in the last 2 years. Can I tell you which bit of CR contributed to that? No. Could I stand up in a court of law and prove absolutely that some of that was dependent upon CR? No. Do I care? No. With numbers like that, it sure as heck isn't doing any harm. It can be, as long as it's aligned to your strategic intent, a way of reinforcing those areas of competitive advantage. That's what makes it sexy. Okay, what about people? I said earlier this is our second area of what we believe can be sustainable competitive advantage. We know from many, many surveys that employees who are satisfied with their organisation's commitment to social and environmental responsibility are likely to be more positive, more engaged, and more productive than those working for less responsible employees. That video was shown across the whole organisation. You think how proud everybody was to see that? To be associated with a company that does something like that, and people in the business that does that? It reinforces their motivation, reinforces engagement. Engagement is a big play for us. In 2007, a study of 1.6 million employees from more than 70 organisations, the Sorota Survey Intelligence, found that employee engagement rose 86% when employees are positive about their company's CR commitment. And when they are negative, only 37% are highly engaged. Imagine running a business with only 37% of your employees engaged. Hard facts. Companies who have engaged employees, on average, deliver every year EPS figures that are 2.3% higher than the rest of their competition. 2.3% extra EPS in 1 year is good. Imagine the compound effect of that on your business. As with all of our ambitions or BHAGs, the employee engagement element has hard metrics, and we measure ourselves against them. We conduct, like many organisations, an annual people survey. We measure ourselves against a set of high-performing companies. Every year, we ask all of our employees to answer some questions confidentially about working at Molson Coors. As you might imagine, employee engagement is a score we keep a close eye on because it serves as a good proxy for gauging the level of focus, passion, and productivity of our employees. We gave ourselves, when we started off with our brew, the task of moving, as an enterprise, our engagement score from 80%, which in itself was not bad, and we achieved that in 2008, to a figure of 84% by 2012. Reaching a level of 84% would have put us at a level which was referred to as high-performing companies. In other words, I think the top 15% in the world. I know it doesn't sound like much, 80% to 84%, but our external research company told us we had less than a 40% chance of achieving it, especially given as we were entering into a very tough economy. So how did we fare after rolling out our brew and mapping corporate responsibility around it? Our overall employee engagement score jumped from 80 to 86% in just 1 year. That's 2 percentage points higher than our 2012 goal. You can draw one of two conclusions from that. We're either lousy at setting targets, or we did a pretty good job. I tend to lean to the latter, but you can make your own decision. This is a comment from Towers Watson. There's one line I really like in there. Molson Coors is in an elite category of companies. Elitism, in this sense, is something that I like. These results confirmed our view that a proud workforce is an engaged workforce, which is ultimately a productive workforce, and we have the data to back that up. Was this all the result of a CR program? Absolutely not. It relied on compelling vision, excellent communication, and the fact that it was built from inside the organisation out. Would we have achieved such stunning numbers without our focus on CR? Again, absolutely not. Have we finished what we can do with CR? Yeah, you're right, absolutely not. That's what makes it exciting. So, let me try and bring this to a head, because I can see some of you thinking about the football. I'll go back to my opening remarks. CR can mean many things, and there's no one right way to do it. However, it is undoubtedly the right thing to do. And there's nothing wrong with companies stopping there if they choose so to do. Though I would say, if I'm being honest, there is little point in you pursuing it just out of a sense of virtue. As well as being the right thing to do, it is basic common sense. Who wouldn't, as I said earlier, take the opportunity to reduce their costs in energy and carbon emissions and water usage? It drops to the bottom line. Whatever you call it, it makes common sense. What I've tried to lay out tonight for you, though, is that Molson Coors, we view corporate responsibility as having additional benefits. It continues to be a critical driver of both our culture and our sustainable competitive advantage by ensuring the relevance of our brands to our consumers and by increasing the engagement of our workforce. Both of these, we believe, have a long-term and direct impact on our profits. To accomplish this, we started with our people. We've seen that when our employees understand where the company is headed, what the strategy is, what the right way to get there is, and how they can contribute to realizing that ambition, they are noticeably more empowered, engaged, and committed to the values of the company. Note to self, only works if you have high-quality people. Because we built our CR focus from the inside out, today we are seeing increased trust and empowerment among our employees and a growing appreciation for the positive outcomes that can be generated by applying our values and culture to the business of our business. I guess finally, I should go back to my health warning. It might not be the right way for other companies to work, but it's right for Molson Coors. Why do I say that? Because it has to deliver, and the only sole arbiter of truth is your performance. We work to a calendar year. In the first 2 quarters, halfway through the year, our net income was up 30% in one of the most difficult beer environments that we've had for a long time. Our third quarter results come out on Wednesday, so please check to see whether it's a flash in the pan. Our share price this year is up nearly 10%, and over the last 2 years up nearly 30%. At the same time, we've also been judged as one of the best places to work in Canada, and also been voted a top 10 brand company. And here are just some of the CR accolades that we've been given over the last few years. Like I say, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just wanted to give you an insight as to why CR is a living, breathing thing as far as we're concerned. It is important to us. It's in our DNA. We have much more to do. But mainly, it is integral to what we're trying to achieve as a business. It makes sense to us. I hope I've been able to shine some light on that for you in some small way tonight. Thank you. So I think if anybody wants to ask any questions, now is your opportunity.
Hi, I was just wondering if you now have plans to reduce your solid waste consumption, seeing as it did go up.
Reduce the
solid waste?
Yeah, as I said earlier, actually that's gone up this year because we did the optimization of the US network, but yeah, it's one of our targets. And we issue that on our website, so we do have targets. For solid waste, it's the same as everything else.
Hi there, thanks for coming tonight. It was a great presentation. Some of the criticisms of CSR sometimes is that it's an umbrella term and that it can be sometimes held separate, as a separate division from the rest of the company. So what is it that has made Molson Coors so successful in implementing it in a whole systems approach throughout all elements of your company?
Okay, it's a good point and a good question, and to some extent I think you might have answered it. Our CR department consists of one person. That's it. The CR department is the company. And it's like anything else. If you want something to be part of your DNA, in the same way that you should never allow HR people to run people, yeah, then it's got to be driven by the line management in the organization. But going back to the way that we try to do, and again, I don't want to pretend we did everything right, but the way we did it was we went to the organization first, asked them, and then try to link it back to strategically what we were trying. So we tried to get engagement and alignment up front. Because again, as I say, we do have a belief that most of the answers to questions are in the organization. You just got to go and ask the right questions.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is like corporate as an artificial individual is constituted of many real individuals. So how do people individually participate in fulfilling the corporate social responsibility?
I wear a hearing aid. I'm very sorry. My hearing's very bad. Could somebody repeat that for me?
I can say that again. I mean, company is constituted of many real individuals.
Yeah.
And how do people individually participate in fulfilling the corporate social responsibility?
Okay, right. Well, there's a number of things. First of all, it's like everything else. You have to create the right environment for people to succeed, and CR is exactly the same. So as a business, we actually encourage very much people taking time off to volunteer. We, as I was saying, organize certain events for people to get involved. And in terms of company giving, for United Way, we will match pound for pound, dollar for dollar, sorry, dollar for dollar. My root's coming out. So there's the practical planks, if you like, or crutches that you can give people in the organization to get involved. But the other way you can get involved is again trying to make sure that everyone in the organization is aligned with where you want to get to. So, for example, in the UK, we sort of evolve every 3 years the charity that we get behind as an organization. In the UK, what they do is they actually allow everyone in the organization to vote on which charity they want to support. So they narrow it down to 2 or 3, and then everybody who votes, they put, I don't know, £5 in per person that votes as a contribution, and so the organization is automatically engaged with the charity that they've chosen. So there's a number of ways you can do it, but the main thing is your line managers, A, have to walk the talk, and B, have to create the environment where people want and can do it. It is no point in telling people that they can volunteer to do something with United Way if they know they're going to come in on a Monday morning and their line manager is going to say, where were you on Friday? It doesn't work. You've got to walk the talk.
Hi, Mr. Morse. Molson Coors. Sorry. Thanks for delivering such a wonderful speech. As we know, business competition nowadays is taking globally or internationally. And your previous introduction of Molson Coors give us an idea that your company is experiencing the same thing. So that kind of reminds me of a business dilemma. See, there's company A in the beers manufacturing industry of country C. Just put it simple. And but they can make the same quality, high quality beers as Molson Coors did, or does, but at a lower cost. However, they achieve those goals by jeopardizing the environment or being mean or harsh to their employees or whatever negative effects or reasons you can put on that list. So my question is, if Molson Coors want to break into that industry of country C, what will be your strategy? Will you try to localize your company and do the same thing as they do to their employees or their environment, or you just will do whatever it takes to keep your brand reputation? Thanks.
Okay, so in other words, do my principles last to as making a better profit? No, I think that, look, it's a really good example, and that's why I was at pains to point out that there's no one right way to run an organization. Even if you run an organization the way we try to run an organization, you will come up with challenges where, theoretically, to use your example, we could produce beer much more cheaply, but we could contaminate the environment. That's an extreme, but there are always decisions that you have to make going forward where you might have to trade one thing off against the other. I gave the example of the US. Our solid waste and water usage went up. We traded that off against lower carbon emissions. So I think that if you come up against a moral issue like the one you raised, the answer is same as Socrates. No one errs of their own free will. If you have a belief and a value-based organization, you keep to those values. If the competition, my argument would be, if the competition were to do something else, ultimately I think that's only a short-term gain. We would look to get our value through the areas we talked about, the quality of our people and the quality of our brands, rather than do anything that would run contrary to what we believe and what we hold dear to us as values within the organization.
Hi, thank you for sharing your experience with us. I just want to ask you a question. When you are get the high quality people, you are investing money, effort, and time to improve their skills. At the same time, when the company is changing or trying to reach sustainability, how could you reach the sustainability and control it when your employees going on and coming out at being attractive by your competitor and losing them?
Okay, so I think I didn't get that. I'm sorry. You're going to have to repeat it. My apologies.
Okay, you said it's all about people, getting high quality people working in your company. So you are spending time, money, and effort to reach sustainability in your company. For those companies who are changing, they need these people to comply with this changing during the time. How would you control and reach sustainability when those employees are getting in and going out to other competitors?
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm still not sure I understood, but let me try and answer what I think you said. Okay. The way that you're asking about how we manage our employee base?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things. You go back to, again, the same principle. The way that you run your business is not necessarily the same way everyone else wants to run their business. What you find is that by establishing a strong culture in an organization, and I mentioned earlier, some people find our development approach challenging, some people find it liberating. By establishing a culture, it's self-rectifying. And people either want to be part of it or they don't want to be part of it. The people who want to be part of it, if you concentrate on engagement in the way that we've tried to concentrate on it, are passionately loyal to the business and want to be part of its future. And that really is how we wrap ourselves around our employees and how we work with our employees. That's got to be reinforced continually. But that's really how you maintain and ensure your employee base is lined up with you and actually generates ideas and pushes you pushes the senior management of the organization to do more. I apologize if I haven't got the right nuance of your question, but basically that's when you're dealing with employees in this area and generally, it's really making sure that they fully understand what you're trying to do as an organization in every sector, and then making sure that they have the power to impact the organization individually.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for taking some time to speak with us tonight. Beer out of a bottle tastes really good. Now, as a multinational conglomerate, you probably distribute, say, 1 trillion individual bottles a year. Now, in the US, it's not mandated that we recycle glass bottles. Now, Latin America has tried to address the issue by having collections to actually pick up the bottle and return it to the point of sale. And in other parts of the world, they're trying to come up with different ideas as well. The US has tried taking in a deposit that's actually part of the bottle sales itself. Now, if we're going to talk about sustainability, we're talking about maybe 1 trillion bottles a year or so that aren't necessarily counted in your waste product. Have you taken into your sustainability discourse what you're going to do in the future dealing with glass bottles?
Right. So, it's a great example again of trade-offs. In Canada, all of our bottles are returnable. Okay? So they cycle about 15 times. Bear in mind, returnable bottles don't last forever. Okay? Cycle 15 times. You compare that to a one trip. Obviously, the 15 times, from the glass usage point of view, is much more economical. Then you actually look at the carbon emissions and the fuel usage of transporting those bottles 15 times backwards and forwards. You look at the water usage. Our water usage, world-class water usage, is what they call a ratio of just under 4:1. Yeah? We hit that in most of our breweries. In Canada, it's nearly 7:1. So you take the extra cost of transporting the bottles backwards and forwards and picking them up, you put in the water usage, and pretty quickly you get to a point where the balance between returnable bottles, what sounds a great environmental investment, and actually one trips becomes pretty close. And so often, you know, on the surface, one thing looks like a good thing to do, but again, you've got to look at the total piece. Plus the fact, with the recyclability now of glass and the lightweighting of glass, because returnable bottles, again, this is far too technical, returnable bottles, because they go through the system 15 times, have to be much heavier, more weight in them. One trips are much lighter, easier to produce, use less glass. So you start to add everything up, and you end up with a balance. And I don't know what the answer is.
More on the business side of Molson Coors, I was wondering, as you expand into other markets, will you continue to acquire other businesses? Because I know that you specialize beers for each market, like Molson Canadian and Carling in the UK. Do you think that, will you expand your current brands to your new markets, or will you continue to purchase local brands?
Yeah, internationally, we only go into new markets with Coors Light. Just think in the last 12 months, we've run into Spain, Vietnam, Russia, Costa Rica, Honduras, all with Coors Light. So that is our focus brand, because the value to us as a brand-driven company is actually in the brand. And so, although we'll go into different countries, establishing Coors Light as an international brand is where the real value is, because one of the biggest economies of scale that you have in an industry like ours is the marketing economies of scale. In fact, the marketing economies of scale is the biggest advantage you get in most fast-moving consumer goods. That's our platform. Now, just to build on that slightly, obviously, if you've got, really depends how you go to market. If you take an operation like we've got in China, where we have all our own business, you know, we employ everybody, you have 400 people on the ground. The more brands you can put through that, obviously, the better the system economics. And so one of the reasons we bought the brewery in China was to enable us to put more brands through that system. So that works in that particular instance. But our flagship always is Coors Light.
I think we have time for one more question.
One more question?
Peter, I'd compliment the presentation tonight. Thank you very much for coming. Can you hear me okay? perfect, up top. You spoke to us extensively about the manufacturing process and what you guys are doing to be socially responsible, and all of us in the room compliment you for it. I'd be curious, we didn't talk at all about the stickier side of your social responsibility, and I know that internally you talk about it, but what about the consumption side of your equation, the issues of liver cirrhosis, addiction, mothers against drunk driving? How are you engaged in helping those causes and those issues so that you continue to have a sustainable business and people can continue to consume your product without causing terrible problems?
So again, just to check, how do we get people to consume our product?
I'm going to change the question. That would be much too easy. So you talk social responsibility on the manufacturing side, and I'm telling you, I compliment you. I think it's fantastic. But on the consumption side of the equation, what are you doing to help be socially responsible and sustainable from that model?
Yeah, okay. Sorry. It's pretty easy to get people to consume our product. No, I mean, it's a serious part of our company, and we've got loads of different platforms, obviously, that we undertake. So, I mean, in the US, we have a system where anyone can call a cab if they're out at night and they've drunk too much, and we pick up the tab. We advertise corporate responsibility. We've got programs for young mothers and young parents to educate them about drinking. We've got programs in Canada about pregnancy and drinking. So, I mean, we've got a plethora of things that we do. Plus, we advertise every one of our adverts, so you'll see drink responsibly. We advertise nominated drivers. So, all of those things we do. Equally, I've got to say, within the organization, we honestly believe it's a privilege to be able to sell beer, and that's not something that we'd ever want to jeopardize. So that's something that's just fundamentally in our DNA again, I guess. But you will always, when I first started in this business a long time ago, when my then boss said, "Don't forget, you're not selling milk," and we're not. And like anything, if abused, it's not good. So we do whatever we can to educate people not to do that. We'll take, sorry, one more question down here, yeah?
I'll shout. I'm close, too. We talked a lot about your CR strategies and what had been very successful for you. What was the least successful CR strategy that Molson Coors has adopted, and what did you learn from it?
The least successful thing we did around CR was trying to do everything. By far and away. I mean, if you went back maybe 5 years ago, certainly in the US, Coors sponsored everything. Absolutely everything. And whilst that's the right thing to do, strategically you've got to say, where's it sending us? What's it aligned to? So, by far and away, the thing we learned from it was that you can actually achieve far more in terms of an organization, in terms of what you're trying to do, supporting your brands and your brand's proposition and engaging your people, if you have a CR strategy that is absolutely clear and also makes sense to the organization. Organizations are people like you and me. Generally, we're not stupid. If it doesn't pass the sniff test, an organization knows it like that. It's got to be compulsive, it's got to be convincing, it's got to be meaningful, it's got to be engaging, and all of those things wrap up together. Individuals, if they have the chance, if individuals in any organization believe they can impact an organization, they are highly motivated. Giving individuals the opportunity to impact an organization anywhere in the organization. I could have given you stories about workers in Montreal who have, to your bottle point, realized that we were washing, 80%, 90% of our returnable bottles bottles in Canada are returnable. We have a small percentage that are non-returnable. We were washing them in the same cycle as the returnable bottle. Didn't need to. It was a worker in Montreal that did it. I mean, I can't remember how many thousand tons of water we sold, saved, and electricity. And really impacted the organization. But again, it's actually what you've got to raise those. You've got to start telling stories as an organization. So we advertise that. We put it on the local blog. We have internal social networking in the business. People can network and talk to each other about what they've done in the CR space. So it's about creating the environment. I can't emphasize that enough. But it's got to pass the sniff test. It's got to make sense. Okay. Thank you very much.
So Molson Coors is a pretty powerful story of a company that acts strategically and on a daily basis on the big three: people, planet, and profits. Wouldn't you agree? Let's give him another round of applause. Peter, I'm sure you know that the Daniels College of Business is dedicated to educating business leaders, future business leaders, around the concepts of ethics, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability. We are dedicated to developing people so that they do understand how their actions and behaviors impact not only their business, but the communities around them. Thank you for sharing your story with our Pioneer Network and for helping us learn a little bit more about how one company does just that. Let's give him another round of applause. One of the great things about this series is now you have a chance to interact with Peter up close and personal. He will join us in the lobby for a reception for the next 45 minutes. Please join us there and feel free to ask any questions that you couldn't ask during this session. We'll see you again in January.
It makes the glass go by so much better.